We are recording.
Oh, it's recording now. Jesus Christ. Okay. I didn't see the thing on the top left. All right. I'm bad at my job. PCP 6262. That is Stacy. And we have Mikey. And I am Funkelman.
You're Zombie.
And this is
We're
Party
going to
Chat.
talk about video games and stuff.
Video games and things.
As we learn how to operate this new method of giving you, thank you for your patience, seriously. But we do have a lot of fun video games to talk about, and we also want to talk about the overall world, but in a positive way. I know it's tough out there, but we want to tell you how to host a video game party remotely, because that's going to be useful and fun for a lot of people. And we're going to start by talking about how, as I predicted, I want the credit here.
You did.
Sports are in fact becoming regular sports because regular sports are canceled, and you still have like ESPN and ESPN2, and what are they going to show?
Stacy, 2020 is canceled.
Oh,
welcome to the worst year ever. That's one of my favorite podcasts,
right.
and it was before all this stuff.
Yeah. So what's happening is I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see the article that we were talking about, but we're also going to just chat about
the big news is that like ESPN is putting a lot of esports on their broadcasts. Not a huge shocker. It makes a lot of sense. Stacy called it. Like, this is what they need to do a little bit, like, to maintain people's interest. So it's a lot of video games of like sports that they're doing. So they have like Madden tournaments, they have NBA 2K and whatnot. But my absolute favorite esport, Rocket League, is getting some shine as well. Today at 4:30 p.m. they will be broadcasting the season 8 World Championships, which has happened already. So anyone who might be watching and going, oh, they're being so irresponsible during this crisis by playing in the same physical space. No, that's from last year. So I already know the result, but I'm still actually pretty excited to like just watch it, to support them and all that jazz. It's a great World Finals, like, for people who don't know like what happened.
It was a good year.
This was the one that you guys went to, right?
Yeah.
No, that was
I want to point out that's what they're doing to start with, is they're basically showing the greatest hits from the last year or so
this
from
makes
various sports. So these are not live sports. They are rebroadcasting some of the best games that people will not have seen because no one's paying attention to this stuff.
It's a good way to onboard people, to be like, look, this can be exciting too. And it's an interesting contrast because RLCS, so for this season, they canceled World Championships. They're going to do this alternative thing called the Spring something. I can't remember. But it's basically a replacement. But they also upped the prize pool that they normally put into Worlds into the regional championships, which I watched. And like the North American regional championships, at least, were a bit of like a sweep. Like the actual finals wasn't that exciting. So like I can understand them negotiating with ESPN and just being like, we don't want this to be boring. It just so happens that season 8 Worlds was amazing. So like it's going to be really fun to relive that. So now we're looking at some of the MLB The Show comparisons as
real people versus game covers, and also just like so. This is a little bit of the game. This is how realistic this stuff looks, and my prediction is that to start with, the networks are going to feel more comfortable showing something that looks familiar to people, right? So these are digital versions of characters, but they look a lot like the real thing.
I can vouch for MLB The Show, like actively emulating broadcast styles pretty effectively for years now.
Yeah, down to the newscaster interviews and
down to
what the mascot does in the crowd in between
well,
pitches.
that stuff, amusingly enough, you actually don't get to see in a real game, but you do get like the top left, the little thing that has like the score of the game and all that kind of stuff. It's emulating real world user interfaces, or whatever you want to call it, for conveying that information. So it is very familiar for some people. I've had my dad watch me play MLB The Show, and it's pretty funny because he watches so much baseball. This man's a freaking encyclopedia, and like he'll just casually be watching me play, and he'll be like, "Oh, that was a bad pitch. You shouldn't have thrown that there." And I'll just turn around and just be like, "Thanks, Dad." but he understands everything that's happening because it's the same thing he's used to.
You also see it like I don't know if I mentioned to you guys, I was just casually walking through the living room, and like Good Morning Weekend was on. It was just like, oh yeah, today at 12 is going to be the NBA 2K tournament where Kevin Durant plays against LeBron James, and then I'm just watching TV. I'm like, this is a video game,
This
and
is
they're
yeah.
and celebrities are playing each other. So it's been interesting.
And it's not this video game player versus that video game player. It's the
No,
characters that
the
they are playing,
athletes.
the
yeah,
famous athletes that we want to talk about.
yeah,
And for
Yeah.
modern day super fans of sports, this is not a shocker because they're well aware of the fact that everyone who is an athlete in a particular sport, and that's literally their profession, they pretty consistently play the video games attached to them. And in some ways, it's actually part of their work is they're like workshopping certain kinds of things and like, but it's
yeah.
also obviously like stress relief and all that kind of stuff. So like they're aware of how to play these games at a high level in a lot of cases. So it's
Mm,
not like it's boring in that way. What I think would be really interesting and fun about this is what happens when pros start playing video games differently than they would like the real
Oh, I
sport.
want to see a room full of basketball players playing themselves. It's gonna be great, man. It's gonna be
yeah, yeah.
hilarious.
Well, I
It
think
almost
I
doesn't
think that's
matter
the
who
next
wins
step.
anymore. It's just
I think
funny.
there'll be a next step where it'll be like, okay, we're gonna be like the Heat, and we're gonna have everyone on the Heat play their characters, and then they'll have
It's
like the gallery view of one team, the gallery view of the other team, and then you'll have
Just
NBA
show it to
2K
them. Yeah,
and
yeah.
just showing
yeah.
like, and then does this
So
actually mimic? how
So
they
it's
play?
interesting because that's definitely technically possible. I just don't know if any mainline sports game right now actually has that functionality enabled. I know that there are some that allow you to take over specific characters, like in FIFA. I'm
Yeah.
aware that you
Yeah.
can play that game multiplayer, and each player can control a specific player if they wanted to, and you could do
Mm,
that. Now, how many players does that scale up to? In the case of FIFA, does that scale up to a full-on 22 players, 11 on versus 11
Oof.
game? I don't know.
Probably not.
Uh, Probably not, because at some level you go like, how many of our players are actually going to do this?
Well,
Well,
and
if
that's the other thing is, can you imagine being a pro player? You make like $1 million a year or whatever, and somebody calls you and says, "Hey, man, can you
mm,
play video games?"
yeah.
but now the developers might get actually incentivized to do this, which could be
Right.
exciting. They
Yeah,
actually
I was
could get
gonna say,
incentivized
yeah.
because it technically could be possible. And if they've actually architected their backends, in particular the servers, to hold up to n number of players, like if they've architected it well, it might be fairly trivial to patch it in, so to speak. So if first one to get there might have a big phenomenon on their hands if they pull it off right.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, well, not as I say, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, extraordinary problems bring extraordinary solutions. We got power tools from NASA, and COVID may bring some innovations in our bandwidth and internet space. It just like,
Yeah,
hey,
it will,
if this is the way
no
that we
question.
have to function, then human ingenuity, let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So,
also think it's worth.
go ahead.
I was gonna throw it to you, Stacey, and say I also think it's worth talking a little bit about what we talked about in terms of how you feel Overwatch might fuck this up.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
what we're
really?
looking at right now is I just pulled up some random tips on how to play Rocket League well, and this is an important step for esports. Rocket League theoretically should appeal to your soccer fans and your NASCAR fans. It is soccer with cars, right? So it's
And you even see
also
that in the pros. A lot of them will
yeah.
talk about playing youth
Mm,
soccer, actually.
Right.
mm,
Yeah. And it's important because again, it's very easy to watch. The goal is to put the ball in the other side's net, and they designed these arenas so that it's very clear how to do that and whether it has succeeded or not. So
That's
you
true.
can know
Yeah.
very little about sports, and you can see Rocket League and go, ah, I see, they scored a point, and you can choose a random team. And increasingly, we are seeing them, like Barcelona is a good example, with teams being linked to pro teams or being linked to locations so that you can start to root for your home team. Rocket
Yeah.
League
So
didn't
FC
originally start out that
Barcelona.
way, but it's
mm,
starting to happen.
So FC Barcelona, the Football Club has a Rocket League team in the European region. They were in last this season, but
Yeah,
but they exist.
apparently
And to be fair,
success at
they
one
were at
thing doesn't translate into another necessarily.
well,
You
with
know,
Rocket League, things ebb and flow. To be fair to them, they were at Worlds when me and Stacey went to New Jersey, so
right? That wasn't that long ago.
it's not like they're
So
garbage. They
yeah,
just had a
they
bad
just
season.
had a bad season,
But
of course. Yeah.
but yeah, you see that transition from FC Barcelona, for example. There's also the Pittsburgh Knights is Pittsburgh's actual esports official thing. Like I don't know how much is actually tied to like the government, but like it's an organization that's tied to Pittsburgh, and they have a bunch of different things and whatnot. So we're seeing that start to show up.
So then this
Meanwhile, in
is
Overwatch,
meanwhile Overwatch.
Meanwhile, in Overwatch.
So this is more your Diary of Christmas Lights version of esports games. What is happening right now? Right, you've got this
Diary of
guy
Christmas
flying
Lights.
around who's just shooting everyone with pistols. You've
no,
got
he's
people
dead.
with shields and hammers. You have snipers on roofs. It's just so confusing to watch, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
You have dozens of characters with their own unique abilities, and some of these can be likened to sort of video game, real esports
archetypes.
abilities.
Oh,
Doomfist is somebody who punches people. And if you like boxing, you might want to check out Doomfist. Other characters are based more on video game tropes. Soldier 76 is your traditional Call of Duty warrior,
yeah,
for example. And then you've just got a lot of stuff that's random and cool. Lucio is a roller skating healer. He
Hmm.
uses his sound barriers to protect people. So it's a bunch of cool gags on how can we use sound to make a hero. And similarly, Symmetra is a character that uses light projection. So
yeah.
it's very
And
creative, and if you play the game, you can watch the esport and really have a good time watching it.
mm,
But
Hmm.
if you don't play video games,
yeah,
holy Moses!
I
and it's
mean,
interesting because in a way that's
yeah.
more analogous to my favorite physical space sport of baseball. Like I don't begrudge anyone who says baseball is boring as fuck. I grew up playing it. That's a particular perspective. I have no problem appreciating what's happening. But for some people, they don't understand how the tension of what pitch selection is in a 2-1 count with a man on second. Like that's a lot of information. And that's actually
Yeah,
analogous in some ways to Overwatch, where it's like, look at what's happening, make sense of it. I dare you, right?
right,
Now
right. In Rocket League,
that
they'll
said,
say things like, "We've got a we've got a fly ball," and you're like, "Okay, I know what a fly ball is."
sure,
In
yeah,
Overwatch, I mean, there's a certain amount of like, this is capture the point. The goal is to stand in place the longest. That's
Hmm.
sure.
basically, people understand what capture the flag means, and capture the
And
point
you
is
can
similar
understand that
enough.
like an icicle thingy popped up, and that was a good defensive move, probably, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I think that's pushing it for grandma, really.
No, definitely
Yeah.
pushing it for grandma. But I was going to say, I do want to give sports fans credit here because it's worth relaying a short story about my dad, actually, again, which is that when I watched the Dota 2 World Championships many years ago, um, it was the first time I was watching a MOBA. I had never played one really. I knew how RTS games worked, but I didn't know a lot about MOBA. So I was learning as I was watching this World Championship. My parents were visiting and they were in New York, and I was like, "Hey guys, I'm watching this. Sorry." And my mom was doing her own thing, but my dad was actually sitting down paying attention. And there was this one moment where he just comments and he goes, "Oh, that was bad for the Chinese." And I looked at him and I was like, this motherfucker understands what's happening. So like
Hmm.
sports fans can actually pick up on and learn like complex games
Hmm. Yeah,
pretty
pretty well.
rapidly actually.
I
Yeah,
mean,
But at the same time, this is intimidating for various reasons when it comes to Overwatch. And I think the main one is honestly framing and presentation.
yeah,
It's a hard problem
yeah.
to solve. But like baseball is open air, big flyby cameras like the ones they're trying to emulate right here, they can be effective. But in actual like the way you actually see Overwatch like broadcast a lot of times, it's rough because you have
yeah.
tricky geometry, and a lot of times they're cutting to the first person perspective.
And just the sheer number of characters, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
going on at given time. So 6 players versus 6 players means there's 12 camera perspectives without even leaving the characters. And sometimes the best perspective is a top-down bird's eye view.
No question.
what's
yeah.
happening on the field. There's also issues where it'd be nice to be able to see on the map where people are hiding, right?
Yeah, Counter-Strike
Um,
has that solved.
yeah,
When they
yeah.
broadcast one player's perspective, we see things that the player doesn't see, which I think Overwatch does a little bit of. I don't
A
know.
little bit. So there are characters who have the ability to see through walls or you temporarily see where all the characters on the map are. You're actually seeing that a little bit right now.
Right, but I mean in the
Um,
broadcast itself.
but in the broadcast, you don't really have like a god mode where you can see everything, as far as I
Okay,
know.
Well,
So,
they
but
gotcha.
they have,
overcome the
saying that
shoutcasting
though, they have done
capabilities.
some real improvements on the post-game viewer, and they've rolled it out so that people who play the game can get the same benefits that the broadcasters get to some degree. You
Which
can
is a great way to do it.
you can replay a match and watch it from the point of view of the person who kept killing you to see how they
Right.
did it,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
Or you can have a floating around camera that you can look at the battlefield from any angle, not tied to
Yeah.
any particular character, so that you can get a broader view of what's going on.
And Rocket League similarly does that. I've actually benefited occasionally from going into the replays and just letting the AI director do its thing so that I could see how certain things were developing from other perspectives.
Yeah, so this is in the context that Overwatch 2 is going to come out. It's going to have a nice single player game that should be very accessible for new players.
Hopefully
And
it's a good tutorial.
hopefully it's good for sure. But eventually it's going to drop you back into this world of competitive play. And they do want to continue to increase the viewership of their competitive games for a lot of reasons. They want the
Yeah,
ticket
they're
sales,
invested.
they want the merchandise, and they want the subscriptions that they can hopefully get. So there's a lot going on with Overwatch that I want to keep an eye on in the long term.
Yeah.
And I'm also just kind of keeping an eye on like how fast is the public picking up on this stuff? Are we still trying to watch traditional sports? Are we moving into esports? Are we ready for this kind of viewing?
Well, cable is important because there are things that cable has right that Twitch and other platforms still don't match. The part of the reason I'm excited about this being on ESPN2 today is that I messaged my dad and he immediately was able to set up his DVR to record it and like set a reminder for himself and was like, okay, he has to like we can watch this together now. Like the live viewing
Yeah.
experience is
Right. And
important.
depending
So
on your gear setup, if you have the right equipment settings and consumer setup, you can actually have your DVR turn your TV on when it's time for the game to play. And even if you were totally forgotten all about it and you're in the other room, it'll turn on and go, oh yeah, Rocket League Championship, cool.
Yeah.
That is something that your PC is not going to do for you anytime soon, that's for sure. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that we could improve the esports experience. Just linking more closely the sport to the ability to play as a casual player, I think would really change the whole scenario for people. Part of what's fun for me is being able to watch the pros and get excited about what they do, but then go back into my own game and try some of the same stuff or see other people try it and fail miserably and laugh at them. I mean, frankly, the same way you can't really do a jump shot like a pro basketball player, don't expect to suddenly shoot everyone in the head perfectly because you saw it on TV, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot of different angles we could think about it. I mean, you guys were here talking and I was thinking of like so a couple of things like, you know, you were saying, you know, it might be hard for people to understand, but I think in a general sense, you know, most video games are plays on, you know, childhood games that we would play, just wrapped around pretty graphics. So, you know, like
Sure.
Tag and Capture the
Mm.
Flag are, you know, games that we would have played. So I think, like you were saying, Zavi, like the presentation, just presenting it in the sense of like, how do we present Capture the Flag in any way that somebody could
Mhm.
understand, and then just say, okay, this is Capture the Flag, but it's just pretty with guns and all that stuff. Also, we have to realize too that, you know, think about the culture aspect where you guys were saying, how do we get people to understand these characters? I mean, you know, when I went to Japan, like it's not like on anime and stuff where video games are everywhere and anime is everywhere. However, you know, here us seeing like an ad for like an ad, mixed media ad with like let's think of something wholly American that's like an American cartoon. Maybe like Disney. Okay, like think of like a Disney and having like maybe Aladdin like on a Chanel ad. Like to us,
Right.
that's like very special. But when I was in Japan, like they had Mario in ads, and it was just like, oh, because Mario is wholly a part of Japanese culture. So I think like when you start seeing Symmetra and
Huh.
and Marcus Phoenix and all these
They've
things,
done
it
some minor
cross
things,
brand.
like they've
No, but
put
I
them
mean
on a
just
cereal
yeah,
box or whatever. It's
yeah.
cute.
Right.
I think when it
Yeah.
starts to
Yeah.
explode, then you're going like, oh yeah, I know, like we know what Mario can do. Mario can
Right.
jump on things. He can turn into that whatever. And
Right.
then he's probably the wrong character because Mario can do a lot of things. He could do
There
everything.
also might
But
be
you
a
get what
cultural
I'm saying.
component, though.
We get the
I do,
idea.
but
Yeah.
there also might be a cultural thing, though, because I think that that plays as schlocky to Americans, whereas to Japanese people it doesn't so much.
Well, I mean, look at the world we're
Like if
living
you
in. That's
have,
what I'm trying to say. Of like, this may
we
be
do
the
have
thing that
celebrities
push.
in all our goddamn ads, though.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that's what
we
I'm
just do it
saying. You have to
differently.
change. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a certain change of like video game
hmm
celebrity culture where
And
it won't be viewed as schlocky because it's just like,
right.
well, I can't go to a game and watch Kevin Durant play anymore.
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
to, do this alternative form of media that I wasn't
hmm
necessarily not into, but now that
hmm
this is really the only thing that could entertain me in that sort of way, I guess I better just indulge.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
you actually brought up for me when you were talking there is the way that actually games change in the sense of sports, right? Traditional
Yeah.
sports games change when they become spectator games.
Yes.
So, like, if you look at all of the major sports, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, etc.,
Yeah, I want to
like
say
they
here's a
have
good one where
evolved due to having an audience and little rule changes and things like that to
Yeah.
accommodate them. We're
Yeah.
going to start to see that in video games, and we
yeah,
should,
I
because
almost wish
Overwatch
Steve
is
was here right now because he would love to talk about racing games and
that's
how they
true.
would need to change if it became a spectator sport.
Well, I mean, in
Yeah,
a sense, we already have that. We have streamers, and their spectators are how many followers they have and how many
Yeah.
people are watching their stream. I mean,
But
sure,
they're
but that's
not
the
different.
necessarily
feedback, but
competing.
no, but also the feedback in the sense
Mm,
of like you get that feedback when you're at a game when people cheering, noise, chants, seeing people excited, seeing people not
Ah, okay.
excited. You have the
Yeah,
human
those
connection there, but
elements.
how does that translate through like watching a stream and then you just see your watch count
Uh-huh.
go
yeah,
up,
all of the
and,
text
Uh-huh.
but
where
then
you
your
guys
chat
go,
And
stream
and
goes
you're
yeah,
insane,
or
and you're just
fewer
like there's
votes.
not really any sort of significant or relative sort of feedback that you can get in the sense of like, oh, I can look around and I can see my fans. You just look at a counter and you go,
oh,
oh,
sure.
100,000 people are watching now. Okay.
Right, that's a different
Right.
experience for the streamers, but you're also right to point out that the design of games is changing because they're
Yes.
trying to fish for streamers. You see
Yes.
a lot of games that like the Telltale games have like a spectator mode type of thing. Like it's built for the streaming experience because they know that that's a big part of what people will do with their games. And I'm interested as games attempt to make this jump from, crowds of maybe a couple, like maybe 100,000 is a good day for a stream of an esport, to
Mm,
trying to break it into truly mainstream on the level of many hundreds of thousands to perhaps millions of simultaneous viewers. The design of the games will need to change another order of magnitude, and that's part of
yeah.
where I think what we're getting at, where Rocket League has a bit of an edge in its foundation. And it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see games like Overwatch that try to evolve but still maintain their core, because there's going to be a lot of people who go, the moment that I'm not allowed to play a twitchy sniper and move the way that I'm used to moving from 20 years of video game design, then it's there's too much compromise happening and it's ruining the game, and the hardcore spectators will feel that way too. But so they really need to figure out how to keep that core as much as they can while still framing it in a good way. A good example is the goats problem that Overwatch had. Part of the thing with goats was that it exacerbated the clusterfuck visually, where you just couldn't tell what was going on because
Right.
the way that you had to play was bombard the people who are being stationary, and it just looks like garbage, kind of,
Right.
right?
You've got all
Yeah.
the
I
defensive shields and all the healing effects, and then all the damage effects trying to break those shields and
no
heals.
one's
Yeah.
dying,
And
Well,
and
and
then
like
everyone's
you,
just standing there, and it seems
yeah,
so
yeah.
strange.
Well, then
and so
maybe
by bringing
that
down the
doesn't make
hammer and
good
basically
for,
saying to support to DPS,
yeah.
maybe that alleviates it.
Yeah, but
Right.
what does that also say about multiplayer game design in the sense of you find these strategies that aren't entertaining to watch as well? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
do you
And
know
they
the
have to stop the strategy just because how it looks is important to how
yeah,
many people will view it.
Why is the MLB introducing a pitch clock in the minor leagues? Because one of the biggest complaints of the MLB right now is how slow it is. And in particular, if you measure the time, it's the time between pitches. So they're experimenting with addressing that problem in the minor leagues this season because they're listening to that and they know that people like it is a strategy actually for a pitcher to delay. It also can be for the batter to delay. And that's what they need to figure out is how do they address that problem for the spectators while still not kneecapping players, right? Because pitchers are used to being able to take their time between pitches and think and slow the pace down when they're struggling. And batters can do the same. They can ask for a timeout and think through what pitch do I expect. By putting a pitch clock on, that is going to change the game. There is no question. So
Yeah.
it's a good example of that kind of thing.
Right. And
It's
here's
it's
one where
games
you've got a
generally have
video
this
game
problem.
based on a real world game that occasionally gets complaints of being too slow, too
Mm.
much.
yeah,
So you exacerbate
In the
that.
case of Overwatch?
No,
baseball
MLB.
Okay.
Yeah,
is
baseball, the sport of baseball. I have heard people go, "Oh,
incredibly
it takes
boring
so
to
long
me.
to watch a game,
You
and
don't have to look
there's
far,
so much
Stacy.
time where nothing's
I'm right
happening."
here.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the funny thing is MLB The
So
Show
you
can be played
exacerbate that with
faster.
now needing to input choices on a joystick to get the action to progress forward. It's going to slow it down even more,
Yeah.
presumably. Yeah.
Somewhat. So when you play MLB The Show online, there is like a pitch timer. Like
Yeah.
they don't allow you to just sit there,
Sit there indefinitely. Right.
for
I mean,
example.
there's a pause screen for a reason. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, just the sort of constant everyday. Like a good example is loot management in games. We
Mm.
can't have
Mm.
that in esports. You can't just sit there and
Oh.
watch somebody shuffle their inventory around.
Well, that's the weakest part of MOBAs, or at least Dota 2. When I watched it, was like there was a whole economy that I didn't know what the fuck was going on. People were buying
Mm.
items, and the commentators were talking about it, and I was like, "This sucks for a spectator."
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
totally
yeah,
not
we
a good
can't.
idea.
Yeah, so we really have to think of the games that we can that we have internalized some sort of game rules and game logic and game language, and think of like, okay, in the broader context, even though we play games, me, you, and Stacy watching Dota 2 and just going like, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine how a person
And
who
and
doesn't
and
play
I'm going to predict it. So Rocket League is going to be an early hit. I'm
yeah,
also going to predict in advance that the battle royale genre is going to do well as far as watching
I
esports.
don't know if
Because
Fortnite
to
is
the
going to do
extent there's
well.
inventory,
It's
you're
going to be
picking it up
Fortnite.
on the
Okay.
fly. Fortnite, Apex Legends, the
Mm.
Call of Duty franchise has one now that I hear is not so great, but
Yeah, I think maybe Warzone and Apex Legends. I feel like Fortnite it's too
PUBG.
kiddified.
Mhm.
It's for it to for someone seriously to sit
Well,
down and go, oh,
let's
okay.
not forget
And
that
there's too
family
much
friendliness
antics.
is important. Actually, like
No, no,
that's
no.
part
I
of
know,
Rocket League's image.
but also it's too anticsy. Like, you know what I mean? Like people can go in there and fuck around with geometry and you're building things, and I don't think that
So that part
even
of the game in small groups and small squads, I think is very weak because the way that people build looks stupid. It's not fun for
that's what I'm
spectators.
saying.
Um,
So
the
they either
50
have to
Yeah,
on
make it
no
50,
better.
no building. I would
I
agree with
wish that
that.
50, yeah, I wish the 50 on 50 was actually a bigger hit because the 50 on 50 fixed that problem actually
So
in
yeah,
Fortnite.
so that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I just think it looks too goofy for it to fly.
Right.
Like all the games we're talking about, they don't necessarily look goofy. Like Rocket League does not look goofy at all. Rocket League looks like you remember how we think of the future and like, oh my God, imagine if this was a real sport. Oh my God,
Yeah.
in like 100 years, I could imagine Rocket League being a real fucking sport. I can't ever imagine
I can also
Fortnite being
imagine
a
there
real
being
sport.
almost no real sports to speak of the way we know
Mm.
them, and then all just being virtual because everybody spends their time there most of the time anyway.
I wouldn't say that. I would say
We'll
that
see.
like the most physically strenuous sports are gonna like fade away over time. Like football, it needs to change or its days are numbered. Period. Just because like people are empathetic, and over time that's gonna whittle away. Like the way the sport is right now, it can't survive with the amount of injuries that it has. Um, other sports, like esports, might become a better option for a lot of people, because the problem with a lot of physical sports is you get injured, and a lot of times that's down to either luck or abuse from
Right.
the organizations and the trainers and all that kind of stuff. You're fucked. You're utterly
Yeah.
fucked.
Yeah.
That
You might get
kind of can
repetitive
happen in
motion injuries in
esports,
video games, but you're not going to get
right?
a concussion that's going to cause you
Yeah.
And it's
mental health
easier to
issues down the
manage.
road.
You could still have the same, like, you could still have mental health issues around pressure and all that kind of stuff, but
That's
that'll never
true,
go away.
but
But yeah, you're not going to get it from
that's in
a
any
concussion.
sport, though.
So
Frankly.
the randomness, the luck of the draw it makes it so that it's actually more appealing in that sense, I think.
Cool.
All right. So I think that's maybe enough on that topic. We're going to go through our games, and then I'm going to talk about how to host a video game party remotely, because I think a lot of people are going to want to do that over the next little while.
Uh-huh.
And
Mhm.
we've done some experimenting to help you out and make it go
Yeah.
better. But first, let's talk about butterflies. I know that's like what, but I'm going to show you.
Butterfly in the
Butterflies.
sky.
Oh my gosh, my green screening is really
Your green
messing with
screen
that.
is
And we're going to turn my green screen off for just a second so that I can actually show you.
What green screen? What are you talking about? You
what
have
a-
a physical portal to another dimension behind you.
Yes, that's definitely no, that's not happening right now. What's actually happening is, of course, I'm using a green screen. Mine's a little physical brown one behind me at the moment. But okay, so still not the greatest picture, but you can see a little forest with little flapping wings in it, and that's probably enough. If I pan around, you'll see a little bird that wants to give my butterflies quests. You'll see a frog that would like some frog treats that our butterflies may be able to provide. I don't know why that's a thing. And little
For our
caterpillars that
audio
want to eat
Because it's a
leaves
listeners,
thing.
that will become
for our
butterflies
audio
someday.
listeners, just imagine all of the above
Yeah, well, but it's a very cute little game. And so I have a friend that has a degree in studying insects, and she works for the FDA making sure our food is safe. So here's one of those jobs that is actually an essential job. And thank you for your service with that right now.
things.
But she can tell you, like, this is pretty good information. It will actually give you the scientific name for the bug and some basic cute little facts about how they're different from one another. And
Nice.
yeah, so the idea is over time you grow your little butterflies into being, their full selves. You can sell them for money that can then be used to purchase more rare eggs that
Mm.
might hatch into various kinds of things. So it's a cute little game. It's enjoyable, and you do learn a little bit. If you were a parent looking for a game that could trick your kid into learning stuff, this one might be an excellent option.
Learning stuff.
And in addition to Flutter, which is about butterflies, they have a more or less similar app called Starlight, which is about moths, which turned out to me to be more interesting than butterflies,
Mods,
actually.
like
Yeah,
Moths,
moths.
M-O-T-H.
M-O-T-H-S.
moths. Okay,
Yes,
gotcha. I thought she
right.
meant mods. Like, are we raising
No,
video game
no, we're not
add-ons?
modding. No.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. The
That'd be
mods
weird.
may actually show up better on the screen. Oh, they do. Like they have an owl friend, of course, and then you've got the flowers, the butterflies, and for reasons I don't understand, we've gone supernatural, and there is this weird little blob
Yeah,
that spits out special flowers. I don't know what's going on
definitely
with
a
that.
weird little blob.
So yeah, anyway, I recommend these games, but you also, as with so many of these mobile games, you have to watch for sort of the creep of micro transactions. It's actually
Mm.
completely free of them when you start playing. There is the option to turn them off. I think they realize they might have kid customers, and their parents might not really want them to spend real world money on virtual butterflies. But there
And you
are
say
ways for you to
the
watch
game like prompts you
ads.
to turn it off?
No, it doesn't. You have to go into the settings
Oh,
and do
okay.
it yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Of course you do.
yeah, of course you do. But you do. I have not at any point felt like I needed to purchase anything with money. And similar to the Walking Dead mobile game, and it's got Daryl's bike, which kind of allows you to just progress faster in a way that feels good for a set rate that
Mm.
lasts for amount of time. In the same way, you can purchase a week or a month or a year's worth of Doug the Glowworm, who will speed up your process because he's just awesome that way.
Of course,
Um,
Doug.
Doug.
I
So
was thinking maybe also another, problem or innovation would be monetization in gaming, since, the increase of online gaming, purchasing, everything has increased 200, 300%. Maybe we'll get a critical mass on people complaining, saying like, this can't work. Like, we can't have just this gross, blatant, monetization going on.
right.
Not even, it won't be exploiting kids anymore. It's just exploiting people in the sense of like, no, I don't want this a part of my game. I need to opt into these sort of things. Or now that everyone's playing games, I can't have 10 games asking me for $5 every 5 minutes.
Right. And I gotta say this, there's something ironic about the fact that we're gonna have more kids spending real world money without their parents' knowledge than we used to before the lockdown. They're literally stuck in their home with their parents all the time. And it is now easier and more tempting for them to click the button to buy a thing.
Exactly.
It's also
That their
easier
parents
for
won't
them
find
to wear
out
their
about until
parents
the end of
down.
the month. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be
Mom,
interesting to see how this.
Mom.
I want Doug the Glower, Mom. Can I have Doug?
I
Will you let me
want Doug. Can I
use my
have Doug,
Doug?
Mom? Please
Mm,
let me have Doug, Mom. I love Doug. Doug went
mm.
away at the end of the month because you didn't give me more money.
I know you
Please,
lost your
Mom.
job, but Mom, can I have Doug?
Yes,
This is a
Oh no,
tough world that we're living
that's
in,
too
man.
real. Oh,
that is
That's
too
too real.
real.
All right, so
we
we're gonna,
promised that this would be a happy episode.
yeah,
Yeah,
so that's why we're gonna change to the next topic now, which is
because
a
there's
nice one.
nothing.
Happiest.
Power
Really,
Rangers Battle
The
for the Grid.
happiest
that
thing of all time.
that
So,
that game is not happy. I've played
no?
it and I've played the
Oh,
story, and when you find out that the
It's not
evil Pink Ranger
oh yeah, the Ranger
and her
Slayer.
Black Ranger lieutenant.
Yeah, the Mastodon
Yeah,
guy.
okay.
So I think yeah, so this is my game, as you might be able to imply by the video background of
yes.
from the game. So I picked this up on the recommendation of my cousin Matt, who's been on the podcast when we had a discussion around what I think I alluded to it in on a previous episode, but to reiterate, um, what about Street Fighter V still annoys me? And in particular, it's the complexity, right? Like the complexity to depth ratio, arguably for a newbie, right? Like I'm sure Joe would just be like, no, the tactical depth is there, but I can't mine it because there's no tutorial and I don't have patience for that shit. Mostly, I do enjoy playing with friends, but it's very different. But anyway, recommendation. I was like, okay, let me pick this up. I really enjoyed going through the story mode. Um, it immediately has a better story than Street Fighter V, which is very funny. And then
It's not.
I can't
Power Rangers
be
was a TV show
no,
for
I know. Like,
years.
but like, so I can't really be objective about Power Rangers. I love Power Rangers as a
So do I.
kid.
Oh my God, are
Like,
we first finding out now that we're both? Hey, I watched Power Rangers
apparently.
up until I was like 19.
Nice.
No,
I think you watched it for longer than I
when
did.
it moved to the cable, and they did, so
Uh,
they returned back to the original universe, and Tommy became their science teacher, and they actually
I've
reinvigorated
heard
that.
about this, but I
That
haven't
was the
seen it.
last season that I watched, but
Nice.
they, I mean, they're
They're a
no
franchise.
slouches. Yeah, they're a
Yeah,
franchise. They make good
and so
storylines.
like going back to like my formative memories of like early Power Rangers, like I really did love the show for various reasons, and it's really stuck with me. Like I remember one of their
Yeah.
PSA thingies at the end of an episode shows someone trying to attack Jason, and Trini is training some other random guy, and Trini goes like, "Look what he does," right? Because this guy was like this young kind of brash, and he's just like, "Why doesn't Jason just kick his ass?" And then like Jason just like deflects, and then after the guy's worn himself out, he like gives him a hand, and he goes like, "Hey man, you're normally not like that. What's going on? Is there something wrong? Let's go talk." And like she goes like, "That's the true power is
Mm.
turning an enemy into a friend." And I like as a kid, I was just like, "Ooh, that's interesting," and it legitimately stuck with me. And I'm not kidding when I say like it's part of my ethical framework for life. But anyway, getting back to the game, it immediately starts off with like an interesting story about like the Green Ranger in this alternate universe staying with Rita Repulsa, taking over the world, and then Rita is totally like being cocky and naive to the fact that he's about to kill her. So he kills her, and like now he's the big bad, right? And he's crossing all these different dimensions, which is their excuse for crossing all the different Power Rangers timelines and universes together into one story, trying to get the morphers from all of the Rangers in all of the universes to accumulate power. And so you play through this fun little story, starting with the original Rangers and like how they fight back and start to organize a resistance and all this. Production values wise, it's double A, I guess, as far
Yeah.
as like
Well, I
like it's
mean, you're
medium.
jumping in later. So this game
Hmm.
was, I
It's
don't know
been
if it
around for
was
years.
early access or the game definitely released when it wasn't finished. And they have been
Uh,
releasing sort of like update packs with like some really
Ooh,
big updates.
fascinating.
I think the last update was like the Lord Zed. I think he's playable now. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with
Yeah,
it,
he's
but
a
I just
DLC.
know that it was very bare bones when it came out. And
Uh-huh.
the support has the grassroots support has been very good so that they've been
Sweet.
able to sort of like update it. So the version you're
Sweet.
getting now probably feels like a 100% fully realized version of the game.
Mostly, I'm missing
Okay.
characters because they're DLC, and I picked up the base game for $20, so pretty
Okay.
cheap.
Oh, and it's still
And
cheap. Okay.
well, the base game, right? So
Yeah.
I go through the story. I played as characters in the story that are not unlocked for me because they're DLC. That's a little weird, I think. But
Oh. Mm.
um, so like, but it's kind of whatever. It's still a good amount of characters in that base game. And then after I beat the story, which was pretty satisfying, it actually teaches you how to use a variety of characters in a smart way. It's a very well done, like story slash tutorial for a fighting game.
Yeah.
It has you playing as the bad guys every time that in the story the bad guys win.
Yeah.
For example, so you actually play as this variety of characters. It finishes with a boss that basically abuses tick throws as a technique in a way that the AI has never done before, and really actually forces you to like start to think about that, which is the right kind of challenge to end on. I think is pretty smart because once you realize that's what he's doing, you can counter it pretty easily and beat him, even though he has 2 more life bars than you. So it's a good, satisfying story. I recommend it just on a single player, honestly. It's $20 and you can probably beat the whole story in a full afternoon of gaming. I think I did. And it's fun and worth it for that. And then on top of that, afterwards, I started playing matches with my cousin Matthew online. Now, this is where we get into things that still annoy me about fighting games broadly, but this is more about me and what I don't have patience for and my preferences. And I think they're interesting to highlight for a moment. In short, this game is like a Marvel vs. Capcom in that you can string together combos for 6 or 7 seconds, and that is super annoying for the person who's getting hit with this combo. There were some windows that over time I was able to beat my cousin here and there by recognizing that there were some windows in his combos where I could block or do something, and I had to actually actively build up the willpower to resist mashing attack buttons to try to respond, and instead turtle up a little bit, wait for that moment, and then counter like in a calculated fashion. So it's not like I was helpless. It's just a certain kind of gameplay that I don't love. I wish that in the vein of a Soul Calibur or a Fantasy Strike, that when you land hits on someone, at most you'll be able to string together a few seconds of hits, because I really appreciate that pace of gameplay, because I could see what Matthew was doing and how he had memorized these combos of like this whole sequence of inputs and dun 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 dun, dun and then leading into the super. And I'm sure for the person doing that, it feels really, really cool. I remember with Sakura in Street Fighter 4, there were some combos that I practiced until I was good at it. When I pulled it off on someone online, I felt cool. But at the same time, that's not tactically all that interesting. It becomes a input puzzle the moment you land that first hit to execute on the muscle memory of what you've done before. That doesn't particularly
Yeah,
interest me.
if you reach a
That said,
point where you have sort of an I win button, you can just press over and over again, the game loses its interest.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and it's not like that's exactly what was going on,
No,
because I was
not in
able
any
to
fighting
counter
game.
I was
But
able to
Yeah.
counter Matthew.
yeah,
That said, sometimes Joe does that to me in Street Fighter 5, and it's just like, I don't think I can do anything right now. And Street Fighter 5
yeah.
is actually a harder game to do that in. Like Power Rangers is actually that Marvel vs. Capcom style thing where that's part of the design is like, here's this
Right.
crazy string you can put
Well,
together.
and with Street
And
Fighter,
I don't
there are
want to
generally
learn that.
counters, but there are so many different characters versus other characters that knowing them all is
Yes,
quite
and
the
that's the
burden.
beauty. That's the beauty of the story in Power Rangers versus the story in Street Fighter
Right.
is that I made it all the way through the story because it was interesting, but also it actually helped me learn how certain characters work over time, which was cool and
That's
important.
great.
And so that by the time I was playing against Matthew, I had favorite characters already that I decided to pick to be part of my 3-man team to face off with him because they fit my style. So it allows you to experiment all these characters and figure out who you like. So yeah, overall, good game. Definitely worth the 20 for the base. I'm still occasionally playing with Matthew and having fun matches. And it was interesting to go through the exercise of realizing what it is about it that was annoying the hell out of me, even though I was still having good matches with Matthew. Like, I really don't find being stun locked in a combo fun. Like,
I don't think
obviously,
anyone
I guess
does.
no one necessarily does, but I think I
Yeah.
have like almost no patience where I was like, hey Matt, let's play something else, because like I'm not going to tell you to take it easy on me while I learn the game, because whatever, but like this is not fun for me right now. Like I'm actually like I have little interest or motivation to like figure this out right now. And then I came back to it later and I was able to figure out a little bit of things. But anyway, just it's worth just admitting my own biases on what I like in fighting games is what I really want to
I don't think it's
drive home.
exclusive to you. I think that anybody feels that, hey, you know, one of the, I mean, it's funny, we were having this discussion about like spectating games and playing games and like finding ways to enjoy games, you know, either watching or playing. But I mean, in that sense, you're sort of becoming an unwilling spectator. You're no longer, it's
Right.
like you didn't sign on to watch yourself get beat up, or you didn't sign on to lose control, in a sense of, you know,
Yeah.
I think the best games we play are the games that you have sort of the most control of when you're doing. Even in a versus match, like
And
you can
it's
go to Overwatch and say, oh, well, yeah, this player is clearly better than me, but at no point does he stop me from shooting or stop me from moving, unless
right.
it's at their power. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, they might.
Their agency
No,
isn't.
but and that's a good analogy, because that's maybe like a good example of what I fear could happen with Overwatch 2, right? I went through a story mode that was satisfying and I felt like it was teaching me valuable things about how to play this game. And then I played against someone who has played this game for a long time and knows his combos and stuff. And there was this leap that happened where I was like, this
Yeah,
is no longer fun,
yeah,
because I don't have any simple options to do anything during those
yeah,
things, right? So you
yeah,
could imagine in Overwatch 2 a similar problem. I played through the story. I figured out who my favorite characters are. I figured out who I want to play when I jump into multiplayer. Then you jump into a multiplayer match and you have a bunch of teammates who expect you
yeah.
to
Also,
perform
there
and a
is
bunch
team.
of
There's a team
opponents.
option. You get no help in a fighting game.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Well,
So
that's just
that
the
can help
genre.
in some ways, but
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. But I do
yeah.
Yeah.
worry that there could be a similar like leap
Well,
in
in the
like
sense of someone could actively change your behavior. Like if you're in a fighting game, there's, you know, there hasn't been a popular fighting game or fighting game where you have simultaneous team play. That's
right.
actually sort of, I think Dragon Ball did it, but
Maybe that
I
Ninja
think it was
Theory game might
cacophonous.
It's more of a
actually.
tag in
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
scenario.
also, but
maybe
in a
maybe
team
that Ninja
game,
Theory game could actually do something. The one that's basically a melee
oh
Overwatch,
yes, the Melee Overwatch. I believe it's out now. I
because
mean, you,
yeah, it
if
is.
anybody has
Might
I
be worth
guess
checking out.
Xbox Game Pass, I think if you guys can play it on PC or
Because
something.
I
Yeah.
don't think you can keep the side view fighting game format and make it a simultaneous team thing. You have to blow it up
No,
to
no, it's
be
just not going to work.
something like that Ninja
But I
Unless
Theory
you
game.
mean,
do dual levels or something.
yeah, but in a
Yeah.
sense,
With little ladders,
that is the weakness and limitation of that kind of one-on-one
Mhm.
elevators.
perspective. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
Police
Police,
ropes.
yeah. In any case, I do think fighting games in the great esports arena, they're very easy for people to watch, relatively speaking,
yeah,
in that
yeah,
you can tell who's winning, but you really can't necessarily guess what the players are doing to make that happen.
It's hard
that's
to
this is
tell
where
really,
whether
this is where the
something's
profiles
impressive.
happen, and I don't know how many streams you've watched, like of Evo
Yeah.
streams. Like the shoutcasting has gotten a lot better, where they
Mm,
are able to detail and profile these players of
nice.
like,
yeah. I've
oh,
seen some
he
Evo
picks
streams.
Cammy, yeah, like
Yeah.
he is on the aggressive thing, and they'll
Yeah.
also say terms that you need to sort of know the language to. But I
Right.
think
Right.
it's very easy to sort of
But it's an
a nice thing that they
invitation to be
do.
like,
Yeah,
oh, what does
yeah,
that mean? Let me figure that
Yeah,
out.
and even
yeah,
even when they're on a high level, they'll stop to discuss. Okay, here's the tension between these two characters and what we should look
yes,
for to see who's winning and who's
yes,
not.
yes, yes.
Right, and I
Nice.
really appreciate that they take a step back for the less
Yeah.
initiated and do
So
that.
it's
Yeah.
funny. We're finding the strengths and weaknesses of like now video games is quickly becoming an even more spectator sort of sport. Because we're forced to. So again, the ways we're gonna have to change to sort of make it more inclusive to the world, not even to
Right,
community, just the
non-gamers,
world.
the many
Or at least
unwashed
there's a big,
non-gamers of the world, if
yeah,
you will.
or at least there's a big market opportunity to do it.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, and welcome to all of them. Welcome to the party. If you see a game
Yeah.
you like on TV, go ahead and try it out. It might be fun.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
So something that Mikey's been streaming and is also currently behind him.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
How do you think that works as a spectator sport?
Tell you what, let's find out. I'm gonna stick it on my screen and we can
All right, go for it.
actually see
Yeah.
it a little bit. This is about what to expect the first
5.
50 hours. So how do you
Oh.
even pronounce the title? Is it Persona 5 Royal or Royale? What is it?
Actually, I thought
Royale's
it
with
was
an
the. I
E.
think it's probably. I thought it was the Royal, but it's Persona 5 Royal. But it's Japan. Japan and their naming convention.
So
No,
true.
really, Japan and their naming
So true.
They're
conventions
nuts.
are. So there's a
You know what they are? They're like a first year art student with their like word choice where like it sounds cool if you just like put all of the pretentious words in it.
Yeah, sure. So there's a new social link. His name is Jose, not Jose, Jose.
See, that's what I'm
Uh-oh.
saying.
It's
Pronunciation
like they just
problems,
do
man.
whatever they want. They
I
just
don't
do
know.
whatever they want, and it's just like his name is Jose. Okay, sure, but they just do whatever they want, and you just have to
Is he
appreciate it.
Mexican, Japanese?
No. He's
Oh
just
boy.
he
No, that's
falls
just
in
his
line.
name.
There's
Oh.
Okay.
nobody. Yeah, there's in this game at least everyone
That's just
is
weird localization.
sort of. No, I don't think it is weird localization. I think that they know what they're doing, and they're just like, we're gonna call them Jose. There's so many
Okay.
examples, especially in Persona games, where they sort of call things different things, and I'm just like,
Just
what?
make shit up.
Really? Okay, sure, fine. We'll just roll with it. So this game has actually been really nice. It's people were saying like, oh, Animal Crossing came at the perfect time. No, fuck that game. Persona 5 Royale came at the time. I mean,
You
we're not
played
talking about Animal Crossing today, and I really wanted to take a big steaming dump on it because I listened to Giant Bomb and I have to send you guys like Jeff Gershman just like endlessly trying to make this game a thing in his house with his wife, and like Nintendo just saying no. You have
Yeah,
to play Animal Crossing
I never
the
expected.
way we want to have it, and if you do it anything else, then
there's
it's
one
just gonna be a horrible
there's one
experience.
resident
Yeah.
representative and that
Yeah.
resident
And it's
representative has to
just-
do everything.
And then literally after that, I just deleted. I was just like, you know what? I mean, just listening to his heart up, like I was like, I'm done with this game.
It's a gross design mistake, and let's be clear, it's not a design mistake actually. Like
No, it's not.
this
It's
is
a
to
very
sell more
intentional
switches.
choice.
This
Oh,
is to
no.
sell more switches.
Ever
And
this is a small.
and now you can't get a Switch online. That's
Yeah.
that's the result
Yeah.
of that action.
That's the extra
So
comedy.
again, we've caused hoarding in a place
Yeah.
where it just doesn't need
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
As
know?
a
On the other
small
hand,
aside-
we're looking at
Yeah.
Persona.
Yeah, a small aside. I know this was Nintendo's MO. If you guys have you ever guys heard the reason Splatoon, like their multiplayer, has rotating maps and it's only a choice of 2?
Why?
No.
So here was their response. Nintendo basically said it's better this way. That was their response. It was like, we want to make it so that it's just the best for our player experience, and that was their response. And it was never again. And
I have a better argument than that.
huh?
And I don't even really play the game, but
Yeah,
like
but I'm just saying Nintendo's gonna do what Nintendo's gonna do.
it's not a bad approach. It's just a stupid wording. Like
Yeah.
you only rotate 2 maps at a time, because then at any point when anyone is joining the game new, they only have to worry about learning 2 maps at a time, or at
Yeah.
least per week. Like
Yeah.
there's your argument. Do
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Back to the game that I love though.
Yes.
So yeah, Persona 5 has been like a sort of a treat to sort of revisit. It is a definitive version of the original game that came out at this point. What is it? Is it 3 years now? Wow. I
It
think
looks
it
like
is.
this could have come out yesterday. Really.
And no, so it did have
Oh, it's
some.
beautiful.
They have give it a fresh
Graphic
graphics polish.
improvements.
It looks a little bit cleaner than the original game. But they've also made some changes with the gameplay and also the story. They've introduced a new Phantom Thief, as you would, called Kazumi Yoshikawa. And she is a first-year student, and she's a gymnast. And she is actually just like a really, really, really nice girl. Like she definitely has a different personality because, you know, this game is about forging relationships. And I was like, oh, what archetype is she going to be? But she's basically sort of like this popular gymnast. And, you know, because she's someone who like has privilege, but wants to sort of be treated like everyone else. So, you know, she doesn't want to get special treatment. She just wants to work hard. She's very respectful. And she doesn't really involve herself with nonsense in her school. She just is focused on gymnastics. As far as her integration into the story, you run into her in the beginning, but Persona, the storytelling device or format would be is that you're actually, the story starts at the middle, and you're actually telling the story up until a certain part in the story where it catches up into real time. You're being interrogated by a court officer. And you go back, and as she reveals things to you, you are revealing the story. So it cuts back and forth. So you meet her in the beginning, but however, she's sort of sprinkled throughout the game. And I don't know, but I have a feeling that she will be playable in the extra semester, a la Persona 3 Fez, where you had you lost the main character, but you only got to play with like a secondary character in the second form, only in this part. So it might be that situation. I'm not sure, but it seems like, because I'm not really getting to interact with her in a super, super meaningful way yet. As far as the gameplay enhancement, there's so many quality of life. You're enjoying this, huh?
Yeah, I'm finding it very amusing that she's reaching into some flowers and pulling a gun out. That's
Yeah.
I mean,
So
this
these
is anime. She could have been reaching in her boobs.
No, these are
clear.
actually new sequences.
that would have
They have-
surprised me less.
They have like new sort of
New attacks?
duo attacks. Yeah, I haven't earned them yet, so I've only seen what I've seen on like trailers and stuff. But they've made several design changes, of life changes, just as far as like communicating like where people are, so you can increase your social links, what you need to do to increase your social links, reminding you what you need to do, sort of making it quick travel available, making it easier to spot enemy weaknesses. There's new music. It's just like a really sort of like, I think of this game and I think of Animal Crossing. I just go like, I just don't understand why these two companies, and I understand the deliberateness of certain things, but I think there's just some quality of life changes being a gamer for so long that you're just like, I don't really understand the decision behind this. This is just frustrating.
Right.
As you know,
right.
like
So-
you can have options and you can say, hey, if you want the more frustrating option, you can have it. If you want the less frustrating option, you can do
Yeah,
this as well, you know?
Yeah.
Well, there are some things I think I'd agree with you with, and some things I wouldn't. But there's definitely things in Animal Crossing that are unexcusable. I lost progress because I was trying to do this thing where I went to Stacy's island while
And then
she
it
was working,
disconnected and everything you
and
did.
then
Mhm.
everything I did was gone. And I was just like, oh, wow, this really shows how god awful Japan is relative to America at just the logic of dealing
Handling
with
network
networking.
issues.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like that is the most
Yeah.
grossly amateur thing that you do from a software perspective when you
Yeah.
run into that sort of issue is you roll back.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem
That
is that
is-
they don't run into that issue, so they don't even account for it when they
Yeah.
build
To some
games.
extent, because they'll have better internet than us and whatnot. But
Way
even
better.
just something as casually though, like there's no way that kids in Japan would not try to do what I tried to do to like game the system a little bit. But
Yeah.
like that is so incredibly frustrating to have that happen.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
so but back to Persona.
Yeah.
The
So
question I have for you is,
yes.
let's say you have never played this kind of video game before, and you're looking at this
Mhm.
and you're like, well, this is wacky. I don't know if I want to play this or not. Would you
And very
recommend this to
pretty.
somebody that's new to this kind of genre? Or is
So
there
I
another
would-
one that you would recommend instead to start with?
As
have
far
good
as like a
difficulty settings.
classic, a modern classic JRPG, I would not hesitate at all to recommend Persona 5. I feel like the story is relevant. I feel like the gameplay enhancements and the gameplay loop is cool because Persona does have sort of two gameplay loops. It's the dating side, and then it's also the dungeon side. So you have to make
The
you have to
social
forge.
side. It's not all about dating, all right?
I mean, no, that's just the name of the
There are
genre,
other
like
games
dating
for that.
sim. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
that's
using
fair.
the- yeah.
Uh-huh.
But the social link side, where
Yeah.
at during the day or portions of the day, you have
It's
to
also
attend
friendship
school.
and so forth.
Yeah,
It's not
you
And
have
just,
to.
going back to Persona
Yeah.
3, they've nailed the synergistic relationship between those two genres in a way that you might not expect. Like they nailed it out the gate with Persona 3.
I mean, it's even better now. Like
Yeah, I
it's
know
even
exactly.
better
Like
now
they're
because
only improving it. It serves such a beautiful pacing function
yeah,
in terms of like, okay, I've been fighting a bunch of monsters. Let me go hang out with people and read good dialogue
yeah,
and stuff like that. And then okay, now I'm ready to go like fight stuff again. It's so good at that. But also they've been committed to streamlining the JRPG experience in a way that is different from Square Enix and still just as valid, where they really do streamline, like, you know, this enemy's weakness now, so press one button to immediately select the
bring up
spell, the skill that
exactly
will
yeah.
do maximum damage, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it works well in that way. You know what? It's funny because there was no universe where I wouldn't compare the story of Persona 4 to this. And ultimately, I do think Persona 4's story was stronger. However, upon second playing, this game is no slouch. I am up to the third. I'm about to start the third dungeon, and I think maybe the latter half of the game was weaker to me. But I think those initial cases where the game's motif is that the idea the main idea of the game is uncovering the abuses of adults against children in different ways, and covering how, in the educational setting, how a teacher could, sexually abuse and abuse children all for their sense of worth. In the second case, gross abuse of someone stealing, plagiarizing ideas and using, safe havens as a way to pay for that, or at least manipulate the children as like, oh, well, I'm doing this for you, so it's okay if you help me out, and then I'm not going to go through all of the cases, but just like different ways.
Yeah.
And also what I've also noticed is like, I'm remembering the promotional material and interviews from the creators and them really, really, really diving and immersing themselves into thief culture and how this game is like, if you are into thieves, of just thieves throughout history, all of the personas are based off of famous thieves in like either real history or literature. Like your persona, Arsene, is Arsène Lupin. There's Goemon, there's Carmen, who's like a femme fatale. There's all of these different, there's all of these.
I've got a weird feedback.
Thieves from.
Hold on. Is that just me?
That's just it. We should be fine.
Go
okay?
on.
Yeah, okay.
If you guys are fine, go on.
Yeah, we're fine. And then also, like, even with the
No, I think
dungeons.
Stacey-
actually, hold on.
Okay.
So, Mikey, we're
Okay, I
having
hear
an issue
Stacey
with your
fine.
microphone.
Really?
I would actually, whatever you just did, talk again.
Hello?
Yeah, that did it. I
Okay.
suspect
now
what was
we're fine.
happening is that the microphone part was kind of hitting your shirt a little bit.
Got you.
And
Okay.
we were hearing the friction at some really terrible feedback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're all
So,
good now.
I'll just quickly
fine.
go back. So I was just saying they really are indulging in like the thief concept that they have. So, you know, even just the framing of the game, like, you know, the first dungeon is a castle and like, you know, stealing something from a castle. The second dungeon is a museum, like, oh, who wouldn't want to steal? And like, you know, then it's like a bank and other types of strongholds that thieves would sort of steal things for. And
Or just
it was
the intro
something
to
that I
the
didn't.
game with the casino.
Yeah, and yes, and yeah, that's not a spoiler because that's the first one. So I feel like I didn't really appreciate the depths in which they really indulge in like this is a game about thieves. Like we are going to go hard into like thieving. When you're in the classroom, there's certain questions that the teacher will ask you that like, you know, are about thieves and like, and it's just like, wow, this is like I just really didn't understand and realize how committed they were to like as much as of thief culture and history that we can put into this game. We're going
Did
to
their
put into this
research,
game.
man. They actually did
Definitely.
research.
Like, and it wasn't
Yeah.
something I paid attention to, but it was interesting. Like I knew about Lupin, you know, being like a thief. And then like, I was like, wait a second, but, yeah. And then Captain Kidd is like another persona. So like, I'm like, wait, but these are sounding familiar. And then I looked at all the personas and I'm like, oh yeah,
They really are people.
these were all known to be, I mean, also fictional characters. These are all known to be some sort of thief in some way.
Right.
And then I was thinking of the dungeons and I was like, oh yeah, you would steal something from a castle. Like we've done, you know, stealing something from a bank, stealing something from a castle, stealing something from a casino. I was like, oh, okay. Like, so it all makes sense and it's just such a fully realized,
holistic,
stylish, just like, yes, a holistic,
sounds like good world building.
Really. And then also like just the style of the game and the way you bring up menus and the way like battle screens, like battle wind screens and the way you attack.
Stylized.
Yeah. It's insane how stylish it is.
Yeah.
Like there's detail. Like I've been working on Apple platforms for a long time, and we like essentially fetishize design and animations. Like we can masturbate to this stuff, and like Persona 5 has some details that are insane. Like look at the health bar on the bottom left when you transition from being in the overworld to a fight, and notice that there's no like cut. It actually like grows and animates and now it's there. That's like, oh my
I think
that was totally unnecessary and a lot of work.
It's funny that you say that, Zavi. I think that's
work.
maybe one of the reasons that it flows so well is that there's very little screen cuts. Like everything is just camera pans and like you said, like
think of the value in God of War of not having think of the value in God of War of not having any cuts throughout the entire game if you don't die, except with like much more style. Like that's the benefit you get, this seamless experience that feels so frictionless. It's really
and that's for the
I have a targeted question
part, not really for this like the social part, because the social part is very traditional with their
that's true.
But when it comes to gameplay, you're right. Like
static camera angle,
going into dungeons, you know,
lines of dialogue,
traversing, shifting into battle, shifting out to battle, of just camera pans and hiding away UI and growing UI and just going like, oh, okay, this feels good, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of
moving through the menus.
But I am gonna say, so Mikey, you had said that you to leave in about 20 minutes. We've got a couple more games to get through before you do. And I think we can take the remote video game party and just run with it without you. I think we can do that, but we definitely want to get to
but maybe you want to go into control. I have one targeted question before you transition though.
Yes.
So with Persona 5, I dropped playing the game for like kind of artificial reasons. I started on too hard of a difficulty. There is no option to change in the middle of a story, and then like I had to replay on normal because I was getting annoyed.
You could change it mid difficulty.
Oh my god!
Sorry. However,
thank you.
We saw a leg. However, I will say quickly that before I put it on hard, I was looking at the changes, and I know the community. I don't know if it's changed in the Royal, but I know the community didn't like the artificial difficulty place because it interfered with the game. So, for example, when you're on merciless difficulty, I believe enemy, if you hit a weak spot, it's like triple the damage. but how does that work when you're trying to get a persona? You can't kill it. So people were complaining that, oh, usually the weakness is like a 1.5 damage.
It's not thought
But
out.
if it's triple, if you find someone's weakness, you'll just kill the persona. So someone's like,
Yeah,
hey,
my
yeah. No, I'm just saying,
my
I don't know
perspective
if
on
it's
hard difficulty
worth.
was sure, yeah. But just for starters, like the fact that you can change difficulty mid-game is a godsend.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
should
You can
not
change it at
be
any time.
optional. That really should be part of
Yeah.
every single game's design. Because once
Okay.
you start a game, to start all over is a goddamn nightmare. I replayed 10 hours of the game and then decided to put it down.
I think that was
But
Steve's complaint too. Like he got up to the
yeah,
first boss and was like, well, I can't beat it.
this
And
is stupidly hard. Exactly.
So,
So
okay.
which I can imagine myself keeping the game on hard for significant parts of the game and then scaling it back whenever it gets annoying, which is good. But
Yeah.
my feeling on hard was that they designed the game for normal and then they just pumped the numbers up and they didn't
Really think
rebalance
about it.
it or yeah, exactly. Which
Cool.
it's I understand it. Just let me switch back to normal. So that's good.
Cool.
All right, tell us about the foundation.
Oh, okay. So control. So actually, I had a little bit more to do than the foundation because remember, I never beat control. So I had that last section. I had to go through the astral maze and excuse me. So from the astral maze and on, I kind of
Music is
just
so good.
went down. So the foundation is cool. Basically, after you get through the game, you kill everything, do everything that you need to do. You get a message from Marshall. I think it's Emily and Marshall saying like, "Hey, there's something going on under the oldest house," and you find the head of operations, Marshall, is sort of around somehow. So you go down into the basement, which is just like these caverns, and you find this thing called the nail, which is a piece of the astral plane. If you guys don't remember, is a part of the oldest house. It's connected somehow, and the board sort of how is connected to the astral plane. So once you get there, you have to start cleansing pieces of the nail around the caverns, and as you cleanse pieces of the nail, more is revealed to you. The former also makes a return, and you sort of find, I think it was revealed, this isn't really a spoiler, that he was a part of the board, but there was some sort of falling out, and
I don't
now
remember that.
he's a part of it. Or if it wasn't, it was heavily implied, and then it's like outright said it in this one. So
Yeah.
he was definitely a part of the board, and there was a falling out, and they don't get along. So you are actually choosing in the story framework of like, should I listen to the board or should I listen to the former? But the board was actually the people that gives you options to these new powers. So Jessie has new two powers.
I want to just point out, look at the way the board talks. I'm going to rewind the video just enough.
Yeah.
So the
just
board,
for people who aren't familiar,
you don't ever quite know who or what the board are, right?
Yeah.
But it speaks in almost as if an alien is being translated.
Remember,
yeah,
the former also
it's so good. The subtitles,
and
the subtitles
it's
so
part
good.
of the humor of this game that depending on which of these options for the various words or sentences you choose, sometimes it's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sounds
Situation,
like really
crisis.
threatening.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, and foundation.
Situation / crisis. So it's like director, situation / crisis /
and then it said, we demand your attention / moxie.
Yeah. Or I think they have something like,
funny.
this is your responsibility / burden or something like that, or something / gift. So they give
it's
you
a really smart thing to point out. I do love that.
They give you access to 2 new powers, which is like terraforming. So you could push, extend like some rocks out of the wall, or it's also like a combat function where there's like spikes on the ground, and you could also push the spikes up. That works with the new type of enemies. They kind of have these rushing axe guys that are kind of annoying, but they stay on the ground. So as they're running to you, can sort of position yourself and have some spikes come out the ground. The second
so you make
power,
your own little perch.
Yep, I think you just saw it. Yeah, sort of. But the enemies in control are pretty mobile. They don't really stay still from what you remember. And then the second part is like, so basically you kind of get these 2 options. It's like, hey, do you want to increase something in your gun, or do you want to increase something in your power? So I chose the gun first, and you can basically destroy the new sort of rocky, craggy material. So they give you the powers that your gun could destroy it, and then they also give you the power that you can control it. And that's basically the two new ways.
And it
It
sounds
doesn't.
like you almost want to replay when you have both of these powers, or can you never have both?
No, because so they made it in such a way that this is environmental, so only the new environments are going to have that. So there's no
Right, I
worth of
see.
going back. And again, as I said, I just finished it, so I was sort of like, oh, okay. I was playing both in tandem in a sense of like finishing up old side quests and going, well, there's none of this is in the old geometry, so I can't use it. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's they do some interesting things with gameplay. Some things that needed a little bit more work. Like I liked them, but you can tell it's like, oh, this is a little bit rough. But I don't actually don't want to spoil them, especially with the side quests. I think there's 3 side quests or 2, or there's like 2.5, and each of them they change the gameplay in a bit, and there's like some funny stuff that they do as well. So when you guys get around to it, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. As far as the
It
lore,
reminds me a little bit of like Portal 2. You add a few more mechanics and it opens up the way you can play the game. But until
I'm not
there's a
even
whole
talking.
new
It's funny
game,
enough. I'm not even talking about the new mechanics. They're actually
Yeah.
using old mechanics to sort of. So like,
new ways.
I don't. Yeah, I really don't want to spoil this one. I'm just
all
gonna
right,
give you
don't
a
spoil
hint.
it for me.
I'm gonna give
But
you a hint. I'm just
from what
gonna
I
give you a
hear,
hint.
it's short and
Yeah. It's
fun.
short. I played it in a day. I played
Yeah.
it in a
Nice.
day.
So we'll play it soon.
Yeah. So that's it. Oh, I wanted to finish up the story part. Sorry. So like as far as the story goes, you encounter Marshall, you see what she was trying to do with the operations, and then you do what you need to do with her. But it sort of leaves the story open ended in the sense of like, remember, there's one more DLC coming. So and then I believe that's the one that's a crossover with Alan Wake. So there was no little hints that I saw. Maybe I missed them for Alan Wakey stuff, but
Yeah, they've
I wonder
definitely
what they're
said one
gonna
of the
do.
DLCs is going to be an
Yeah,
Alan Wake
I believe
DLC.
this is the one. I mean, given the state of the world, though, I wonder if it will still hit that date.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, it's going to
Smaller
be what
teams
it
have
is.
less of a problem. I think smaller teams have less of a problem. I don't know how small Remedy is, but we know this isn't AAA per se, right? They did a digital
it's like
only
a double
release.
A.
Yeah, they might have an easier time. They might be more flexible in their
And the fact
structure
that they're
to
working on small chunks at a time with an existing game engine that works is really in their favor.
It's much easier.
So yeah, I will say this for anybody who's never played Control. Excellent game, really fun.
Yeah.
There's a
nice,
reason that
nice to look at.
I think
also,
it was Stacy's game of the year, right?
Yeah.
It was my game of the year too.
Okay.
So highly recommend. And with this DLC basically that's coming out, there are these short little episodes. If you buy the full game, it's not going to cost you anything, and it's going to be fun. Simple. So yeah.
Cool.
Enjoy. Free
Very,
extra
very
stuff is
nice.
waiting for you.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So
I think I'll awkwardly transition to my Walking Dead.
Was it so awkward?
Not so awkward. So I've played this game for a good long while, actually. Walking Dead No Man's Land is a mobile turn-based strategy game based on a Walking Dead universe. Initially, you did not even really interact with like characters from the show at all, but they started smelling money and started putting characters from the show in the game in various ways over time. Not in any ridiculously like from a game perspective, you still have a I mean
it's pretty much fan service. There's no getting around it.
But the reality for me right now is that I still have teams of mostly my own characters, not characters from the show. You are incentivized to like use one character from the show often because they will have leader traits, which can be significant rewards. So like it makes kind of cool sense as a fan of the show that Glenn's leader trait is that he's like, I forget what it's called exactly, but something about like looting, because he was like a really good like recon scavenger person for the group in a lot of ways. And so he gives you extra food based on all of the walkers that you kill for that encounter, right? So the way the game works roughly is you have 3 characters for each encounter that you do, and you will have either walkers or Yeah, it's really good. You'll have either walkers or other humans that you have to fight. The characters come in different classes. The best way to give you an idea of how they really thought through how to make this feel like The Walking Dead is that any character with a gun, when they actually attack on the normal levels, will attract more walkers in time, which is one of the core things that they always talk about in the show is don't use guns if you can help it. So if you actually come in with a squad of like people with guns, and like you'll have an easier time annihilating that first wave of walkers without getting hit, but a shitload of walkers are going to come at you in a few turns. So that's like something that I think is really clever that they thought through. Overall, this game is just really fun, and I got back into it because I've been doing more work on my weekdays, and so this fits in really well with how I like to work, which is typically working in 25-minute chunks with 5-minute breaks. So on those 5-minute breaks, I will log into the game, I'll collect my resources, tap, 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 tap. I'll do a quick encounter to scavenge some supplies. I'll accept the equipment and characters that I've upgraded and then put someone else in the queue because I'm at the point in the game where it takes hours, possibly half a day to upgrade someone, right? And I'll just grind the resources and do that kind of thing. I'm at the point at level 13, which there's many more levels for sure, where I haven't even unlocked some of like the stuff about how you upgrade people because that's how much it's, I haven't played the game in a long time. But it's still fun because the foundational experience of the three characters doing the little encounter is still fun. When you do encounters that are at your level, it's almost always doable. When you stretch yourself thin a little bit level wise, your characters are maybe a level below or something. It's clearly designed so that the knife guys who normally take out a walker no problem with a single hit, they're not going to take them out in a single hit always when they're under the level that they're supposed to be. So it's very like methodically crafted in that way. And if you're a few levels over, you can just like no brainer, just like kind of steamroll them just by going like, okay, you shoot, you do that, da 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 da, and you just go through. So it does a really good job of keeping you engaged when you're at the right level of challenge, allowing you to feel powerful when you're actually over the level of the thing. And then if you want to go for a challenging thing that'll give you a better reward, it's going to be hard. And chances are that your guys are barely going to get out of there alive. And that's all really fun and good. They have so many ways to play the game. It is one of those mobile games where it's just like you can do PvP, you can do PvE. There's a mode where you're actually reliving moments from the story where you don't use your actual characters, and then there's the actual story of the game where you do use your characters, and then there's scavenging, and then there's so many options. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but they
How
do give
many
you a nice
economies are there?
variety.
That's the big question.
So not too many, not too many. So there's the standard gold that you use for a lot of things. I will shout out that like some things are like stupidly expensive, and there's this weird mix of they're actually pretty transparent about the percentage chance of getting things. If you just tap on the little eye, you
Oh,
can
they're
see.
supposed to be.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
sure that's partly through compliance for Europe and stuff. But it's a really well designed screen with pretty clear. Like if you know percentages, you can make a pretty informed decision. And Walking Dead is a mature show, so like on some level, like if parents are okay with their kids like seeing all the blood and stuff, then hopefully they're also like being careful about the percentages and all that behavior and stuff. But in any case, it is a little ridiculous that if you wanted to buy Michonne, you don't buy her, you buy the tokens. And like you'd have to spend a stupid amount of money to just unlock her if you have none of her tokens. So like that's not great because I can see there being misunderstandings of like, wait, I thought I bought Michonne. No, I bought 80 Michonne tokens, right? That's annoying as fuck.
Yeah, and I've
they-
seen
I
that in
mean,
other Walking Dead games too.
Well, no, I think that's been the standard design for these character games where
Yeah.
you rank
And
up, you buy the tokens, and then you rank them up. So, oh, I've
and
earned her, I have her, but I haven't gotten her
right.
full potential. Yeah.
Or even just so the worst case scenario is someone buying it and thinking that they immediately get it, and that feels bad and stupid. But I could imagine a scenario where I play the game a lot and I grind a lot of Michonne tokens during a special event,
Yeah.
and I'm almost there, and for the sake
The
of
event
time I go,
ends.
okay, fuck it, I'm going to spend the $10 or whatever, or maybe the event ends, I'm going to spend the $10 to cover that distance, and that probably wouldn't feel so bad because I've gotten a lot out of the game. The place where it's bad is if you literally have no tokens and you buy it and you think that you're going to get the character. I'll
Mm.
end my notes on the game by just saying it's still fun. It's been out for years. You can pretty easily navigate and play the game the way you want to. Like, it's not hard. Like, it's a lot of these games for me, as someone with like some OCD in terms of wanting to optimize how I play through these games. Sometimes these things can be overwhelming where I want to go in and do an encounter, but I get caught up on all the other shit that I arguably need to do to play efficiently, like collecting my resources and upgrading everyone. It's pretty snappy to do all those things, and it's usually worth it to just ignore that if you want to and just jump into a scavenge encounter just to grind resources.
Yeah.
So it's like pretty frictionless if you can manage your OCD shit to just
Yeah.
jump in and get the little 5-minute fix that you wanted.
I
So
mean,
I'm really enjoying going back to that game, and yeah, I've been playing it a
I
lot.
mean, I think I've just reserved myself to the fact to think that these games are OCD bait, and I know what kind of person I are. So whenever you say something has tokens, I'm just like, I'm staying away from that because I
Nope,
know
not
that.
mine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just, it's
fine.
just not worth it.
That's
And
absolutely fine. I think
yeah,
that this game gets away with being a bit more ethical than most because it serves a a secondary value to them, which is just keeping their property active and alive. So like Walking Dead is not going to, unfortunately, it's not going to air its season finale because of production problems because of COVID. And so this game can serve this purpose of keeping the
season or
franchise
series?
alive in people's minds. Season.
Oh, okay. I thought it was done, or next season is the last season.
I have heard no such thing, but
Oh,
whatever, it's
okay.
possible.
I thought it was over.
Uh, I don't know,
Darn.
but I'm pretty sure it's still doing well, and they'll keep it going as long as they can make
Mm.
money. But
As you can tell, I'm
in
not
any
a fan of the
case,
series.
yeah, it's fine. It's actually been really good this season. So it's like, oh, we're not going to get our season finale. That's a bit of a shame. But at the same time, like, oh, I can stay connected to the show. So because the game can serve this other like function as far as the company's concerned of like keeping the brand alive, they don't have to make it as scummy as other games where it's like this is their source of income. They need to farm people. So yeah, it's but I hear you about like the tokens thing. It is definitely not
Yeah,
ideal. I
yeah.
would rather have, for example, the butterfly game option of like, here's the thing that I pay $10 a month for, and it just doubles everything that I get in the game as a straightforward way to monetize it. But I
Yeah,
don't think they have that kind of thing in this game, unfortunately, this
yeah,
particular Walking Dead game.
yeah. Well, those types of games are just not for me then. They sound fun and,
Yeah.
they are sort of like, plays on, different types of role playing and stuff. But because immediately when I
Yeah.
saw like what the battle screen was like, I said, oh, okay, this looks a little bit interesting. It looked like a little bit like that game Overworld that you played with the creatures and the turn-based thing, or Overland, I think it was called.
Oh,
Yeah,
Overland. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's what it
Uh-huh.
was, Overland. I was like, okay, it looks
Yeah.
interesting, but
Overland is more about getting resources and getting the fuck out. This game is a bit more about actual
killing
combat.
zombies. Oh, okay,
Yeah. You
cool.
do need to get the fuck out, but it has more like in Overland, you feel so disempowered 90% of the time.
I
In
see.
this game, at least, you're killing walkers and feeling good about that. So I think
Okay.
I'll transition to House Party, but at the same time, if you want to make an elegant exit,
Yeah, I
Mikey,
think
it's
this
just
is
about to
time.
be
It's
one.
actually
So
it's 12:59. Look at that. All right,
yeah,
guys.
look at
Well,
that.
I did download House Party, so I will try it, and I am
All right,
hoping
we'll
to
have a house party
listen
soon.
to and watch how I can
Yeah, you'll
actually
have
use House
a
Party
Feel free to
because
join our Rocket League watch party later.
okay. Oh yes, yes.
yeah.
What's the
I'm gonna
details?
do that with House Party.
Send it.
You need
Okay.
ESPN too, though.
All right, guys.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Peace. Bye
Peace.
bye, Mikey.
So
All righty.
let's talk about House
Are
Party.
we still in here? Your video went away for
Uh,
me.
really? Because I see you just fine.
My sidebar thingy with your face went away. Whatever. I see you now.
It might have
So
taken a moment to go back to speaker view. We'll see.
no, I just had to swipe over to the Zoom proper app. It just confused me for a second.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll talk about House Party.
So
So
I
I
downloaded this
use
thing at your
this.
recommendation, but I will say I've read about it beforehand because I was looking up the various video conferencing apps and how many people you can get on each of them, whether they turn your meeting off after a certain period of time, because I am dealing with businesses that are trying to do video conferencing. And this is the least appropriate for business video
Right. This
conferencing
is
application
specifically,
available.
yeah, they brand themselves as a face-to-face social network, right?
Right, and they make
Um,
it fun in
and
some interesting ways. Yeah.
yeah, so
Exactly the ways you would not want your employees to be having fun during your video calls.
probably not.
Yes.
So this is definitely for like personal social consumption, right?
Yes.
And the way this came up was my cousins wanted to have an online get together, and I was in a WhatsApp chat with them, and I was like, "Are we doing this on Zoom? What's going on?" Like 15 minutes before it started, and they were like, "Oh, I thought we were using House Party." They had mentioned it before, and I was like, "Oh, you're right. Let me download it, get it going," and it was pretty easy to become friends on House Party because you connect it to your social networks and stuff, and then okay, now I'm friends with this person, and I immediately can see that they are in a house party with a bunch of other people who I hadn't been friends with, even though I know them, their family. So I jump in, and boom, there's a video. I'm with them. And then for each person who I didn't already wasn't friends with, there's the add friend thing right there, and I was able to click them for the people who I know. Like I knew everyone on the call; it was all family, but I just didn't have like their email or whatever the hell. So like very seamless experience. So many props to just being like get in immediately as someone who is technical. It was still I still appreciate like elegant design and whatnot. And this was very seamless, and there was plenty of people who were also trying this out for the first time in my family who are less technical and had no real trouble, as far as I know, just jumping in. So I'm on this call with possibly the full 8 people. I'm trying to think through the people in my head, and I think it might have been full. So all these talking heads at the same time, and we're catching up. Hey, how are you? How's the baby? Da, 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 all this stuff. Oh, one of my cousins is in college. Hey, what's up? How's college? Oh, that's a nice kitchen behind you. Like you're in a fancy place now, and like
And so you
just
can end up
socializing.
pretty easily with a call with a friend and a friend of theirs that you've never met before.
Yeah, you can actually. Yes, and you can actually very easily. You can lock down a room if you want to. So it's just a little lock button. You press it, and now that house party is locked, so people can't just jump in. But you can also, as like a presence feature, just declare that like you're here, and then if someone else sees that, like a friend of yours sees that you are here, they can just jump in and be like, hey, what's up? So it's a way to just be like, I feel like being social right now, maybe let's, like you can very casually, frictionlessly just do that and just be like, oh, I see that my cousin's on who I haven't talked to in a while. I just jump in and just go, oh, hey, what's up? What are you up to? What's going on? Because you have video, because that's like the foundation is video. There's no text chat. It's like much more like, this person is clearly already okay with someone jumping into their thing if that's the settings that they set up and willing to socialize and oh, maybe they're watching something, maybe they're playing a game, maybe their significant other is right there next to them and they're both going like, oh, hey, what's up? I could see those potentials. Now onto the game side of things, it was easy for my cousin to just launch the entire group into, now we're playing a game. It took a little bit of like figuring out how this works, but because there's 8 of us on a call, we were able to just organically help each other out and go, no, you should press this button now, press that button now, that kind of stuff. And so it has all these games that are built into it. So you have Heads Up, which is a classic where one of the people becomes a person who has to do the guessing, and everyone else knows the thing that they need to guess, and you have to describe it with words maybe. Sometimes it actually explicitly tells you, instead of words, act it out, and you're supposed to do that. And it's really interesting because when you have a group dynamic, we're like enforcing the rules like socially, the way you would in person kind of. So like when it was the act it out thing, not everyone caught it, but I kept like pestering people. They're like, you're supposed to act it out, and like a few people were also doing that, so they tried to do it. It's harder to act it out. It became fun. And then that's one type of game. And then the other type of game that we played on there, two other types of games. We played a general trivia one, which is an immediately a different social dynamic because everyone's being quiet and trying to focus, but then in between the questions, because they come really rapid fire, people are kind of jostling each other a little bit or going like, oh my god, you got that wrong, like how do you get that wrong, like for a lot of like general knowledge questions, those very funny moments
Yeah.
where everyone felt stupid for 5 seconds, right? Because they're just like,
Yeah.
oh
But
shit,
at
I got
least
that
it's
wrong.
equal opportunity stupid. in a
A little
way.
bit, yeah. So like
Yeah,
there were a few
yeah.
times where like there were some ones where we were just like one of my cousins who's in college got a question wrong and we're just like, what are you learning over there? Like like that kind of stuff. It really, these games are designed to lend themselves to that, and they're fully integrated into the app very seamlessly so that you just play it on your phone. The last game that we played was a Pictionary type game where one person had a canvas that they had to start drawing stuff and everyone else had to guess what it was, and once we guessed correctly, the person drawing would press a button to like check mark, okay, I get that point, move on to the next thing. And that also became pretty fun. So it's really well designed. I do recommend it for actually like hosting like party type things. It's easier than what I've also done, which is have Zoom calls where I screen share, keep talking and nobody explodes, and give remote control to people,
We'll get
which
to
is
that in
still
a minute.
possible. Yeah, exactly.
Not,
So
not yet.
I'm working on a segue here. So like
Well,
it's
before you
possible to
segue
do.
though, there's a point I need to make about House Party.
Okay, but so like it's possible to do that kind of stuff through Zoom, but this is much more seamless. It's easier to set up. You don't have to explain so much. People just, shout at each other and work it out. And like um and it was fun. And those were only 3 games. I don't know how many more games are on the House Party platform or whatever. The last thing I wanted to mention is that it's obviously related to games in the sense that there are games you can play with people, and this is an important time to be able to do that. It's also relevant to games because House Party got bought by Epic Games. I think it was a
So
year or two
interesting.
ago, and
Yeah.
that's gotta be part of their future plans for the Epic Game Store, is to have something like seamless
And
video
it's gonna be
integration
like,
just be
now
part
have
of
your house
their.
party play Rocket League together.
Exactly, with
Could
like video
happen.
overlays or something that you can
Yeah.
control, like as like Steam has an overlay and you mostly use it to accept game invites and maybe address someone's chat message and see who's online. If I don't know if Epic Game Store even has much of an overlay right now for while you're playing a game, but you could definitely imagine how if they can actually pull off this as an overlay, as an efficient overlay that doesn't tax your system and whatnot, literally just having video, like you enter a game and then you automatically, the default setting could be for that, for your close friends, your Epic Game Store friends or whatever, you have started a house party that they can just jump into, and then boom, there's their video while you're playing the game, and it's just like, oh hey, what's up, oh hey, what's up, oh yeah, I'm playing this game, oh yeah, I can see that because it's also automatically screen
Right.
sharing. I don't know,
And
but
one of the
the
things you'll see
possibilities.
when they broadcast Rocket League as a tournament is you see all the players' faces, and that's part of the fun, in a way.
Hmm.
How great will it be when we can house party it up and we can see the faces, at least of our fellow players, if not the other players?
Yeah, in Rocket League, because
Yeah.
Psyonix is owned by Epic as well.
Yeah. This
We'll
should be
see, but
interesting.
I can't wait to see how that develops. Epic has ridiculous amounts of money coming in from Fortnite, and that probably is increasing now. I don't know, but
Guess we'll see.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting platform to recommend to people at this time, regardless, because it's just fun to do social games. It's a better experience, even if it's albeit a slightly better experience than Jackbox games. And Jackbox games are great for like
Again,
social casual
hold on a
parties.
minute on that.
Okay.
So let me give my public service announcement about house party and video chatting in general. This is not a secure method of communication, folks, right? And in 2 ways. It is possible for other people to bump into your stream. It's not an encrypted thing, house party, right? So theoretically, somebody out there can just see your video.
I don't know. I don't know.
House
So you
party,
need to
I
be
do know. That's part of my research. Okay,
mhm.
so a
Like
lot of
from a
video.
hack, right?
Right, right,
Okay.
correct, right. So a lot of video conferencing services are encrypted in part or in whole. Zoom got in trouble recently because they said it was full end-to-end encryption, and that was not actually true. But to the extent it wasn't true, the only person who can really see and or record your video is Zoom themselves,
Mm,
right? A
okay.
third-party hacker is not going to have an easy time doing that, right? So house party is easy in part because they do not worry themselves at all about these security needs. You don't have a password to get into a Zoom room. You don't have to figure out how to onboard your friends onto Zoom. You just have to have them in your contact list on Facebook or wherever that house party can download those contacts and immediately connect to them. right? So
Yes-ish.
yes-ish, right? And
With House Party, you have to do the part where you actually request to be House Party friends, and they have to accept it.
right. So at least it's not somebody who's calling you out of the blue that you kind of don't
Right.
want to talk to,
Right.
right?
But there is the
That's at least
possibility of someone like if the act of going live, like you could miscalculate the, like if someone joins on your stream that is annoying, you're just gonna need to unfriend them if they keep being an asshole. I
right.
guess.
Right. Yeah. And you can't record through House Party, so I'm not too concerned about people, you can record an overlay of what's on someone's PC if you have a nice PC. But people working on their phone or whatever, I'm not too concerned about people's House Party recordings coming back to haunt them.
Well, House Party actually has a Mac app and probably a Windows app too, and it works okay. The actual games part of it
it's
doesn't work.
possible to have some sort of whatever, but it's also useful to know that in general, recording people without their consent is illegal in most states. You at least have to tell them that you're recording them, and in most cases, you also have to get their consent for that recording to be admissible. I mention this because you never know what people are going to say. You never know what the ramifications of that could be. You could have an angry rant about your ex in the middle of a divorce proceeding, and it could go not so great if that gets in a court of law. But House Party is not a secure medium. It's there to have fun on. It's there to mess around with your friends in an unofficial capacity. Obviously, don't use House Party for something important.
Yeah, Snapchat exists for a reason. Like
Right.
Snapchat for one-on-one where you give a shit about privacy, House Party for when you're want to have a seamless gathering of up to 8
your
people.
Friends. Right. Yeah.
And dick around.
There are many video conference applications. As a society, we're going to have to make some hard decisions about what is and isn't okay. Is it okay to have people join with their camera on when they may not have thought to put their pets on? These are things that we are developing. What are our standards? And there's no clear answer yet for a lot of those things. So you're going to see a wide variety. And House Party is the least secure and also the most user-friendly. It just has a limitation on the number of people, in part because then they don't have to program around how to accommodate all the potential noise and crowd.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely in part a design consideration because on a phone you can only fit so many talking heads simultaneously, and they actually want you to be able to see everyone's face at the same time, it seems like, in the design. So 8 is a reasonable cap on that. If you had more people, they'd have to tackle the challenge of elevating people's faces when they're talking and so on. And I guess they don't.
And what to do when everybody's yelling at once because their team won or whatever. So yeah, House Party is a good volley for somebody who's not familiar at all with video conferencing apps beyond maybe the occasional, Skype or FaceTime call or whatever.
Yeah, I actually think it might be like the best option for that relative who is hard to onboard to like everything else.
Yeah.
It could be a good option. But
yeah. So did you have anything else you want to say about House Party in particular before we just transition to doing these kinds of things in general?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
So I'm not going to go too much into what video conference thing should you use if you're not using House Party. There are a cajillion options, and both are most are perfectly reasonable for purposes of holding a home party. Just Zoom can record, so if you want to record something that's useful, most apps don't have that. Zoom also has a 40-minute limit, so it'll kick everybody off after 40 minutes unless you pay them $15 a month. So be aware of that. That's the downside, right?
Yep.
But there are a lot of other apps. Snapchat. There's Microsoft Teams now. What else are the old classics that you use for person-on-person?
Discord, Slack.
Yeah, most of these have expanded to at least handle a few people.
Facebook Messenger.
And in some cases up to 250 people at a time, which is way more than I would recommend anybody doing for any kind of party, period. Even in real life.
That's an actual conference.
That's a hazard at that point. But choose what you like, what's comfortable for you, and just make sure you test it in advance. And that is doubly true with what other kind of games you want to host. make
Yeah,
sure
dry
that,
runs are very valuable.
yeah, make sure that you have tried
Grab the one
this
person.
before.
Yeah, grab the one person in your guest list for whatever you want to do that is the most tech savvy and is remote, not there physically with you, and do whatever you want to do between the two of you to figure it out. That's what I did. I threw a thing for my brother's birthday, and me and him got on a Zoom call to like start to play around with like, okay, now I'm giving you control of my screen. Let's see how that looks. What's the bit rate looking like for you? Is the video choppy when like, is it playable, right? Like for Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, it was doable, but there was a variety of experience, probably depending on the person trying to control the screen and what their
Yeah.
connection was like, right? So some
That's
people
one in
didn't complain at
particular.
all. Some people were fine.
That's one in particular I want to point out is a great one to play when you have a mix of abilities in the room. You want to give the controls for, so in case anybody doesn't know what this is, Keep Talking and Nobody Explode is a bomb defusal game where you have one or more people reading the bomb manual and telling the person who is physically manipulating a sort of little virtual bomb how to defuse it. You know, press this button, cut that wire, turn it over, and give me the serial number. And then somebody needs to be able to use the controls well enough to do those things, right? So not everyone on the call needs to be able to press buttons on a bomb or turn it
Right.
around and look at it on the back, but somebody
Or
needs
manipulate
to.
a mouse in 3D space.
Right, and it does help that Keep Talking Nobody Explodes is on multiple platforms,
Including VR.
including VR, which is interesting. But you still need to be able
Yeah, it's
to
on
share
Switch, PC.
this. At least I recommend being able to share this with the other participants. So you use the share screen feature, which is on just about every video conferencing app now. So the person with the bomb can share the screen, and then you just kind of gotta trust that the people with the manual are not also watching. But it's super entertaining to listen to the
Honor
manual
system.
people and the bomb person like talking excitedly to each other, and you're
Yeah.
just kind of watching peacefully, not having to be involved in that.
Yeah, I actually think that like I don't have a better recommendation than this game actually for
Yeah.
like these times because it's literally a game about developing communication techniques during a time where a lot of people don't know how to do this over digital.
Right, and it's stressful, but only in the sense of it's a game, so you can
Yeah.
shrug it off at the
It's
end
like,
of the
oh,
day
the
anyway.
bomb died. The bomb blew up. We're all dead. Okay.
Let's do it again, or choose not to. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody is in any way in any kind of real world trouble.
Yeah, but that same procedure, right, is potentially applicable to a lot of games. If you can screen share a game where the other participants just need to receive that information, such as all of Jackbox TV games, then you can do that. If you can give control of your device to other people, then you can do something like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, and anyone could beat a bomb defusal person. There's limitations about like don't do that and make someone play Street Fighter. That would be stupid and terrible. But because they're going to have low quality video coming in relative to you. Um, but you can get away with a lot for games that are not so twitchy and whatnot. So you have some good options there, and there's plenty of party games that are um, more built for local play that can be adapted for online play in these
Right,
kinds of
right.
ways.
So with Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, the manual can be just downloaded by any web browser, or you can at least view it on any web browser, right? The game itself you can get on just about any mobile app store, or you can get it on Steam if you have a computer.
Or Switch.
They do their best to be very widely available. Just the bomb program. With
Mhm.
Jackbox Games, it's also very easy. You can go to jackboxgames.com to buy the games you want. They're not terribly expensive, $5 to $10 each, maybe.
They're cheaper
Um,
on their website right now
right.
for everyone on a budget relative to the Steam prices, and you just get a Steam key anyway. So
Good to
that's good.
know. Yeah, so go to jackboxgames.com. And then how it actually works is when you start a new game, it gives you a little code that is a unique code for your game. Then everybody goes to jackbox.tv and puts in that 4-letter code. As far as I
On
know,
their smart device
in their
or
smart
laptop
device.
or whatever.
Yeah, as far as I know, only one person needs to actually own the game, the one that is sharing their screen. Everybody else can join for free.
Yep, absolutely.
So pretty cost effective in that way as well.
Yes. And then I think for that, so that's one particular kind of setup that could be good for your friends who are capable of gaming but don't have all the platforms and don't want to buy all of the games for all of the things. Um, for if you have a circle of gamer friends, um, this, I've seen it effectively happen where a combination of Discord and then the game lobby for the game. So we had a Smash Brothers tournament for a friend's birthday, and that's what we did. We were on Discord, and then we had the game lobby for Smash Brothers, and we ran a tournament, and that was all good fun. Naturally, everyone owns it in that context, and I don't think we have to tell people too many things for that, because if they are that kind of gamer and their friends are that kinds of gamer, they'll figure it out.
Right.
But just a reminder that you can
Yeah.
absolutely do that, and it's not that hard. It's absolutely possible. You have all the tools.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of tools, I want to mention that Discord has added screen sharing. Kind of quietly rolled that out in the last month or so, right before it became more important for everyone to have that. So Discord has, on some basic level, a lot of the tools you need. Just be aware that they're not necessarily the most fully featured, and they don't have the same video distribution moxie that a Google or a Microsoft or Apple would have. So my experience is that the screen sharing is a kind of choppy experience. It works, but it's not beautiful.
Yeah, that's more for like sharing a slideshow with people and that sort of thing. When you're dealing with that, another setup that's worth shouting out is your typical streamer setup, but very specifically, I don't like to rate the different services against each other because whatever, I'm not trying to advertise these people and whatnot, but I will give the firsthand experience that Mixer, with its patented sub-second latency technology, they're not kidding around. It's actually that good. I've had the experience of being on a call with someone and playing Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and this friend of mine was mostly silent and just letting me play the game, and then in between fights commenting a little bit on what happened, and it was essentially instantaneous. It was like they were right there with me. So that's be a good scale where you could have maybe a few friends, you'd be playing a game, and they're going to be reacting on the call that you're on them with, like pretty much as it's happening in your game.
Yeah. And as a final thought for me, something I've done before that can also be fun is if you have a game that you like playing with friends, like your Overwatch or Rocket League or whatever, you can set up a video call like with Zoom or whatever. And when you minimize the app, often what it does is it just puts a little thumbnail-sized image of your friend in the corner of the screen. So you can effectively turn off the chat from the game itself, if you even had that on, and leave the Zoom call chat on. And now you're ignoring all the unwashed masses and the terrible things they say to each other. And you're just in there with your friend playing, and it feels very personal and fun. You can see the expression on their face and everything.
That's another thing that's casually worth mentioning is like, as more of us get our socializing from online and play more online games, certain features are really important. To shout out Rocket League again, Rocket League has a feature right there in the settings. It's a little bit hidden, but instead of your default, the defaults are that you see everyone's chat all the time, but you can go ahead and make it so that you see 0 text chat. You can make it so that you only see quick chat, which means the approved messages that are not vile and stupid. And you can see only quick chat for your team, so that any shit talking from the other team, you literally don't see it. I've done that sometimes because it's just like, I don't feel like dealing with people's toxicity at the moment. So I switched that setting.
As a girl gamer, I'm very aware of which games are good or bad at handling that. And as much as Overwatch has gotten better and they have a diverse cast of characters and try and encourage their players to not be assholes in general, even they're not perfect. It's
Didn't you say
really,
they addressed the group name problem a little bit
they
somehow,
did.
maybe?
They did. You don't see so much looking for a girl gamer to fart on camera. You don't really see that anymore.
On stream, on stream.
On stream, whatever, man. Whatever. It's still weird. And whatever
It's very weird.
it was
It's
weird.
very weird.
And now you see more legitimate group names, or at least they've made it very, very hard to use the most obvious ones. And it seems like just making it harder for people has changed the culture enough.
Yeah, I mean, it does two things. It affects the culture because if you can't troll as easily, you don't troll as much because trolls are lazy. They're like, they're not
Exactly.
like, there are some who will go out of their way to, make someone's life terrible or whatever, but like just making it hard or like it does that. And the other thing is it changes the perception because even if those people are still creating groups with those names, they're being filtered out so that the players generally are having a different experience. And obviously that's gross censorship and we should fight it tooth and nail because freedom of speech is the most important thing, never mind the experience of girl gamers.
Yeah, well, and
That was
that's,
sarcasm.
yeah, I know, but that is the ongoing
Not for you, for the
debate
listeners.
that this debate may still be going on a decade from now. I won't be surprised. The freedom to versus the freedom from, right? There is a
Right.
real chilling effect that if I speak and I have a lady voice, if all of a sudden I am subject to harassment, I may want to speak less. That's
Uh-huh.
so
It's
there's
that
one kind
simple.
of
You don't
freedom
want to
and then
deal with
there's
that shit.
another. Yeah, of
And then
course.
like the gross thing that you'll get from people from gamers is just like, yeah, just deal with it. Like it's part of the game. It's just like it doesn't have to be.
Well, and the
So,
thing
and in the
is,
case of
the extent to
options,
which it's part of the game differs on your accent and how high pitched your voice is. So the person who's saying whatever man is part of the game is probably someone
yeah.
who's never experienced what it's really like to be on the other
Yeah,
side of that equation.
their only experience of being on the other side of that equation was when Rust decided that they were going to randomly roll players' race, gender, and other attributes, and then people were going, "I don't want to play as a girl. Other players keep harassing me," and it's just like, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah. Brilliant. That is.
I love that story so much. Anyways, we're a little off topic, but yeah, like when it comes to how much time we're spending online, like these features matter as far as your ability to cater your online experience and all that, because it's always going to be better when you're having positive social experiences online. It's
Right.
not rocket
And
science.
frankly, people trust their friends for a reason. So
Hmm.
if you can have a nice gaming night that feels social, but it's around people you trust,
Yeah.
that's something that people are going to just feel, that feels good.
I also think that something interesting is going to happen as a result of this culturally, which is people's ability to silently police their experience is actually better online. By which I very specifically mean when someone is being a dick on a group call, you can mute just that person and completely have them erased from the conversation,
Yeah.
and they'll maybe get the picture, but it doesn't matter because you aren't hearing them, and that's an improvement.
Yeah.
And so I think like the kind of thing that in person you can't tell that person to shut up the same way, like comfortably, right? You can't, like you're begging for a confrontation in a way, so instead you have to resort to like being nicer or like trying to like meet them where they're at and rib them back. Online you could just fucking mute people.
Yeah, you can mute people and you can kick them out, and most video call apps will not allow them to rejoin, at least not the existing
Mm.
call. They might allow them to join you in a future call, depending on how the app is set up. But
Yeah, so when you bring that shit to your friends, you might have a harder time being socially accepted nowadays with this new technology.
which is good.
So
Maybe that's for the
good.
best. Yeah. And again, the public service announcement thing. There's a thing called Zoom bombing, in case anybody hasn't heard of this, where bored kids who are not able to go to school right now are able to just put in random numbers or look online and
Teenagers with
search for
free
numbers.
time, teenagers with free time and not fully developed prefrontal cortexes are perfectly safe and they never do anything bad.
Right, clearly. So they would never do something like go into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and pretend to drink booze, or go into a Jewish religious service and put up a Nazi virtual background. They would certainly never do things like going into support groups for trans people and just yelling all sorts of homophobic statements at them. That would never happen.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so just to be aware that this is a thing they're not just doing to
We do need
targeting
to be
specific
careful.
groups, but yeah, they're literally tools out there that are designed to attempt to join random meeting numbers until you get into one. Okay,
Yeah, I
so
believe that.
if you put a password on your call, this will not happen to you.
Yeah.
And if
You just got
something
to make
like
it a little bit harder for them.
just
Seriously.
just that little teeny bit, you just have to make it slightly harder than other people. That's all
Right.
it takes. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, you got to be careful with all this stuff for sure to preserve your safe spaces. And but yeah, there's so many nice options to like play games with friends right now and use these tools, whether they're gamer friends or more casual friends.
Yeah, just don't be that guy that ends up on Twitch being made fun of and broadcast live. Don't be that. Because that's
I
what
don't
they're
know,
doing
maybe he
now. They
deserves it.
organize on Discord, then they record the people they're making fun of, and they put it on Twitch. That's
I
why
see.
this is, yeah.
I see. Yeah, that's bad.
It's Reddit gone mad in video form.
This is a happy podcast, though.
It is. And that's the whole point, is to enable people to have a nice party and not worry about that.
Yeah, because it's becoming essential services.
Hey, you know, I had a bunch of friends last night who all dressed up and had a dance party. Point your camera at
Nice.
the middle of the room, and everybody plays the same music, and we're all good.
That's cute.
It's cute, right?
I would probably mute myself and play heavy metal to ignore
You'll
everyone and
thrash
just
while
be
everybody
dancing.
else is
Yeah,
like,
dancing totally differently while everyone else is dancing normal. That'd be funny.
that would be.
I want to send a video of the dance party to some of my family who love dancing. That sounds adorable. But anyway. Maybe that's where we'll leave things.
Right. That is a good place to leave things. Don't be afraid to be creative with your tools, folks. Just test them in advance with somebody who knows technology a little bit. You should be good.
And, be prepared for the eventuality that a little Nazi fuck will try to ruin your day.
Just password it. You're fine.
To quote Childish Gambino back when he was a stand-up comedian, children are tiny little Hitlers.
That is what they are.
And on that uplifting note.
This has been the Party Chat People's podcast. You can now see us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now YouTube. And we enjoy you listening to us. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.